Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a completely everyday agricultural phenomenon and, well, treating it like the massive biological mystery it actually is. I mean, if you've ever seen a flock of chickens, you've probably noticed that the roosters are significantly larger than the hens. It's so incredibly common, we don't even second guess it, right? We rarely stop to ask why or how nature maintains that exact size difference. So we're going to put on our genetic detective hats today. We're going to use mountains of data and some truly brilliant mathematical modeling to uncover the hidden biological constraints secretly governing the physical world. We're kicking things off with an evolutionary paradox. See, in wild animals, there's this thing called Wrench's rule, which basically dictates that the size gap between sexes gets bigger as the species gets larger. But domestic chickens, they stubbornly defy this rule. Take a look at their wild ancestor, the red jungle fowl. In the wild, the males are a massive 68.8% heavier than the females. Yet in domesticated broiler chickens, which we have literally bred to be absolute giants, that gap actually shrinks to just 21.5%. So what exactly is the invisible ceiling suppressing that gap? To solve this evolutionary rule breaking, we first really need to define what we're looking at here. The biological term is sexual size dimorphism, or SSD. Essentially, it's why male and female animals of the exact same species grow to drastically different sizes or express different physical traits. For our broiler chickens, it specifically refers to why the males consistently outweigh the females. Ultimately, we want to figure out, can we just breathe this difference out, or has nature completely rigged the game? Now, we definitely can't just eyeball a chicken to solve this, right? Scientists had to go big. They analyzed a massive data set containing exactly 203,323 body weight records of commercial broiler chickens. And crucially, all these measurements were taken right at 35 days of age, which represents their peak commercial growth phase. By looking at a population this massive during such a critical window, researchers could actually filter out the random noise and hunt for the hidden genetic culprits driving the sexual size dimorphism. To actually make sense of this mountain of data, researchers used what are known as bivariate models. Think of it kind of like looking at two sides of a single coin simultaneously. Instead of treating body weight as just one generic trait, they treated male weight and female weight as two distinct, sex-specific traits that are secretly talking to each other. It's like a genetic magnifying glass, letting us see how the sexes might be operating under totally different biological rules. And researchers didn't just take a wild guess at which genetic factors mattered. They utilized sophisticated mixed linear equations. You can think of these as mathematical filters that peel away environmental noise. They used these to test 7 different bivariable models. By progressively layering on different variables, they discovered something fascinating. The most accurate model, Model 7, proved that simple genetics aren't enough. To accurately predict a bird's size, you literally have to calculate direct genetics, maternal genetics, and the secret mathematical relationship between the two. This brings us to the 2 primary suspects in our size mystery. First up, we've got direct additive genetics. This is the bird's very own inherited DNA blueprint, the exact genes it personally possesses for growth. Second, we have maternal genetics. Now, this isn't the direct DNA the mother passed down to the chick. Instead, it's the genetic influence the mother has on the environment she provides. Think of it like her genetic ability to pack more nutrients into the egg she lays. Both of these forces are acting on the growing chick at the exact same time. And here is our very first major clue. When we actually measure the direct heritabilities for body weight, they're almost identical. We're talking 0.28 for males and 0.29 for females. What this means is that the 20% size gap isn't just because males inherited some dramatically stronger growth blueprint. Nope, they both have roughly the exact same genetic potential to grow big. In fact, it goes even deeper. The direct genetic correlation between the two sexes is a staggering 0.91. That is incredibly close to a perfect 1.0. It proves that male and female body weights are highly interdependent traits. Biologically speaking, they're practically moving in lockstep. The specific genes telling a male broiler to grow large are essentially the exact same genes telling a female broiler to grow large. You literally cannot easily select for one without pulling the other right along with it. Okay, so this leads us to the ultimate twist in our detective story. If their genetic growth potential is nearly identical and their direct heritability is basically the same, What invisible mathematical force is holding one sex back more than the other? Why on earth is the male broiler ending up 20% larger? Well, the answer lies in how the bird's own genes interact with its mother's influence. And the answer to that riddle is a phenomenon called antagonistic pleiotropy. I know, it sounds super complex, but it's essentially a literal genetic tug-of-war. It happens when a specific gene controls a trait that is incredibly beneficial in one context, but actively detrimental in another. So, ironically, the exact same genes that make a hen an excellent, highly productive mother might accidentally be the very genes restricting the maximum growth potential of her sons. And here is the smoking gun. When we look at the covariance, which is the mathematical relationship between the bird's direct genetics and the maternal genetic effect, it is strongly negative. This means as maternal influence goes up, direct growth potential is forced down. But look at the difference here. This biological tug-of-war is significantly more severe in males, at a negative 0.72, compared to females at a negative 0.56. The mother's genetic influence literally puts a much harder brake on the male's growth. As the researchers point out, this implies a much more profound antagonism in males. This mathematical clash acts like an invisible leash. If breeders step in and try to select solely for identical sizes between sexes, this hidden negative covariance fights right back. It proves exactly why modifying sexual dimorphism is so incredibly difficult. If you pull on one genetic lever, you cause an unbalanced, antagonistic reaction in the other. All right, let's move from the math out into the real world. Mathematical models of 200,000 birds are incredible, for sure, but what happens if you test this over a lifetime? Well, we turn to an absolutely astonishing 67-generation study conducted by Paul Siegel. For over 6 decades, researchers took a single founder population and selectively bred one line for maximum body weight and another line for extremely low body weight. If this size gap is just a flexible trait, surely 67 years of extreme breeding would break it, right? The results of that multi-decade experiment are just staggering. Even as the high-weight birds and the low-weight birds diverge by more than tenfold, they look like entirely different species. The males consistently stay heavier than the females. Whether you're looking at the 4-week or 8-week marks, it doesn't matter. Despite tearing the species' overall size to absolute extremes, the dimorphism, that gap between male and female, stubbornly remains. If you track the percentage of dimorphism over those 67 generations, it reveals this absolutely fascinating pattern. The ratio jumps up and down over the decades, sure, but it constantly exhibits this self-correction behavior. Whenever the size gap gets too extreme in one direction, it just bounces back. Nature simply refuses to let the size ratio between males and females spiral completely out of control. And honestly, this all makes perfect sense when we look back at the core genetic numbers. The actual heritability of the size difference itself is a tiny, tiny 0.04. That means breeders who are attempting to artificially force uniform sizes between sexes are fighting an almost impossible mathematically rigged battle. Plus, simply selecting for larger overall body weight naturally amplifies the dimorphism anyway. Those direct and maternal effects remain locked in an eternal genetic antagonism that humans can barely even put a dent in. It's exactly like Paul Siegel noted. Nature possesses homeostatic mechanisms that maintain stasis in a population. Despite decades of intense, focused human selection, the invisible math of covariance acts as a hard boundary. Nature literally has built-in shock absorbers. The antagonistic pleiotropy we discovered in those bivariant models, that is exactly the homeostatic mechanism preserving the biological balance of the species, no matter how hard we try to selectively breed it out. So, as we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us with a pretty profound realization. We often think of agriculture and breeding as these massive human triumphs over nature, but the math tells a totally different story. If something as simple as a chicken's size is governed by a hidden, unbreakable mathematical tug-of-war between its own DNA and its mother's genetic legacy, what other biological mysteries are waiting to be solved by the numbers? What other invisible constraints are secretly shaping the natural world we rely on every single day? Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll see you in the next explainer.